Hi, welcome to the show, R2000, the Better Built House. My name is David Stringer, and I'm going to be the host of 20 programs. Over the course of those 20 shows, we're going to look in detail at all aspects of energy-efficient housing. We're going to look at building science, design, and a whole range of construction options that will result in an energy-efficient house. Now, the series is aimed at builders, so we're going to constantly be relating what we're looking at back to conventional construction practices to highlight what's necessary to upgrade the house. We're going to be seeing a lot of energy-efficient houses as well. We're going to be using the R2000 house as one example of a high standard in housing. And we'll notice some things about those houses. For one thing, they look like conventional houses. But beyond the energy savings, building a house in this manner results in a quality product. Now, this is a hands-on show, and I've never built a house. So we've got a guy who has built many energy-efficient houses for many years. His name's Oliver Drerup. I think it's time to go meet him.
Well, I guess we're going to finish the interior partitions in here today. Vapor barrier taps at all the outside walls, and there's base clad coming later this afternoon. Good. Thanks, Henry.
Hi, Oliver.
Hi, David.
Welcome to show business.
I'm viewing this with trepidation, but we'll see what happens.
Well, you've been building energy-efficient houses for close to 15 years, so what we really want to rely on for you is your experience as a builder and your viewpoint as a builder.
Well, I'm pretty enthusiastic about building high-quality houses, and you may have trouble shutting me down.
I guess that's why I'm here, huh?
I guess so.
Well, Canada is recognized as a world leader in energy-efficient construction. Why is that? Is it our high fuel prices or our cold climate?
Well, fuel prices really fluctuate quite a bit, as we've seen in past years, but it's certainly because of our climate and because of the cost of fuel. The other primary reason is that Canada has had a real coterie of researchers who've been working since the end of the Second World War, looking at the way in which insulation performs in buildings, a really tight research community, and there are a lot of innovative builders in the country. Between the two of them, the whole process has come to the attention of the government, and we now have programs like the R2000, which is intended to promulgate this sort of building all through the country.
Yes, I just walked past my first R2000 sign, and I bet it's not my last R2000 sign, so let's start there. What does that symbol mean to a house?
Well, it's really a performance standard. It has several things that make it up. The first is that the building has very low fuel consumption. The second is that the building has been tested for air infiltration, and the third, that it has a mechanical ventilation system which has also been tested. All three of those things go together to make a really quality product.
So it's not just a simple energy stamp of approval?
No, indeed it's not. The houses that we're going to be looking at in this series actually use as much as 50% less than conventional housing in terms of their energy consumption. But nonetheless, the real reason why a consumer would become involved in a product like this is because it's a stamp of quality. In order to build to the R2000 standard, you have to build a better built house.
Well, they warned me that you use the word quality an awful lot, and you've been putting a lot of stress on it. So I think we should check you out and have a look at some R2000 houses.
Here are a variety of houses that have been constructed across the country. As you can see, there's nothing out of the ordinary. Some of them are plain, some of them are fancy. This one's from the prairies, this one's from Quebec, and these are from British Columbia. The houses aren't restricted in size, shape, or even in construction techniques. Here's a multiple unit project in Toronto, and here's a house in the Maritimes. Every one of these houses has been built to the R2000 standard.
So what you're saying is that a builder is free to design the house any way they want as long as it meets that performance standard.
That's right. This is a performance standard, not a prescriptive standard. What we do is we ask builders to submit blueprints to a computer simulation to see how the building is going to perform before it is constructed, and provided it meets the requirements of the program, it's a house.
So you're saying there's no one right way to build an R2000 house. You can build it any way you want. That's the end of the series. Goodbye, right?
There's a little bit more to it than that. There are some key features that go into actually producing these houses that we should look at.
There are 5 key features that are common to R2000 and other highly energy-efficient houses. First, they have higher levels of insulation than the conventionally built house. Second, the houses are built to control air leakage and to be draft-free. Third, because the house is that much tighter, these houses require a mechanical ventilation system to provide a controlled and regular supply of fresh air to each room of the house. The fourth feature is the use of efficient heating equipment. The fifth and final feature is the use of building designs which make use of passive solar heat. These 5 features are the most common elements of an R2000 house, and we'll look at each one in more detail.
Well, to my unpracticed eye, this all looks kind of conventional. Where are the differences?
In a lot of respects, David, it is conventional, but there are a number of subtleties here that aren't immediately apparent. You've got to appreciate that this whole thing is an energy system. We're really looking at the building from the bottom to the top. We're looking at foundation insulation, walls, roofs, even down to the selection of doors and windows in the building.
Okay, so that sounds like you're going to use more materials and higher quality materials, but what makes it tricky?
Well, you're going to be using a lot more design, and you're also going to be using a lot more quality workmanship on the site. There's nothing particularly tricky about it. We just have to use a lot of care and a lot of attention. Let me give you an example. What we have here is just a standard 2x6 wall, somewhat upgraded to give us R20 in the middle, but you'll notice, David, that there's an insulative sheathing that's been put on the outside, and for the purposes of this mock-up, we've got strapping on the interior to demonstrate that you can also put more insulation on the inside if you wish.
Are you using the 2x6 to make the wall thicker for insulation?
That's one reason. Another reason is because we're able to put these 2x6s on wider centers. They're 2 feet apart instead of 16 inches, which is conventional in 2x4 construction. As a result of that, we reduce the amount of wood in the wall. And since wood is not as good an insulator as is the fiberglass, we wind up getting a very strong building, but a much higher R value.
So 2x6s, 2 feet apart, actually reduces the total amount of wood in the structure.
Right. And not only does it
pretty neat.
reduce the total amount of wood, but it gives us a higher insulative level.
Well, now, is thick insulation the kind of key feature of the R2000 home?
Well, there are 5 key features, and what we want to do is look at the next one, which is the control of unwanted air leakage in the building, which is what this poly is here for.
Well, every kind of construction uses poly over the insulation. What's different about this stuff?
Well, many different kinds of construction do employ poly, but this is going to run continuously and very carefully detailed right through the entire building. Let's take a look at that.
We know that in the standard house, a great deal of air leakage occurs through the various leaks and cracks in the shell of the building. The leaks result in uncomfortable drafts and high fuel bills. The R2000 home is built to control air leakage. By installing either plastic or other materials in a continuous manner around the house, an airtight seal to the house is provided. This is referred to as the air barrier.
So this air barrier runs continuously throughout the house all the way up to the top and around, wrapping the whole thing with no leakage?
That's correct. You've got to be very careful to seal it everywhere in the building. It goes around all the headers, around the floors, it goes across the ceiling, around electrical boxes, for example. We don't want to have any holes in this barrier if we can avoid them. And that's going to cause a little bit more necessity for care and attention on the builder's part.
Well, it seems to me that if you do your job really well, the people won't be able to breathe in the house.
Well, what we're doing here is dealing with the third key feature of an energy-conserving house, which is a mechanical ventilation system. We are going to use a mechanical ventilation system to deliver air to every room in the building to take the place of the air that previously has been passing through the wall just willy-nilly.
Well, can we have a look at how one works?
Sure.
A mechanical ventilation system supplies fresh air to the home, while at the same time exhausting stale, moist air from where it is produced. Inside the home, the system must be sized to meet the needs of the house. It must be able to supply fresh air to all locations of the house and to ensure consistent air quality at acceptable comfort levels.
So, in comes the good air and out goes the bad air. Is that about it for this unit?
Well, basically, yes, but there's a little bit more than that going on here. Inside the box, there are 2 blowers. One of them is taking stale air out of the building and exhausting it to the exterior, and the other is bringing fresh air in from outside. Inside the box itself, the 2 air streams pass adjacent to one another, and the incoming cold air robs heat from the outgoing warm air, so it actually preheats the cold air coming in. The critical issue with the unit is that you must be very careful about the introduction of that cold air into the building. It isn't a requirement of the R2000 program to have a heat recovery ventilator. You must have ventilation. You don't require heat recovery.
Oh, okay, so ventilation is a must and heat recovery is just a bonus.
Right. But the critical thing here is how that cool air is now brought into the building. You have to ensure that it mixes with house air adequately and that it's not going to be blowing into the various rooms and places where you don't want it.
Right, like around your ankles.
Exactly, and what that means is that you have to pay particular attention to the design of the system where the grills are placed in the various rooms, and how you're going to mix that incoming air with the volume of air in the house. Now, what we ought to do, if that's adequate for ventilation systems, is to take a look at mechanical systems, at the heating system of the building. So let's look at the fourth item that we were intended to cover.
Okay. Are these new energy-efficient furnaces that are available part and parcel of the R2000 house?
No, really the single most important criteria in selecting a heating system for an R2000 house is safety. Health and safety is the central issue. We want to ensure that there's no backdrafting and there's always a good supply of combustion air.
Well, does the mechanical ventilation system also supply combustion air for the appliances?
Adamantly not. The mechanical ventilation system is in the building only to supply quality air to the occupants of the building. Any quantity of air that's required for combustion equipment must be delivered to that equipment itself.
Are there any other kind of overall considerations for the R2000 heating system?
Well, because it can be so much smaller than conventional heating systems, there are lots of innovative approaches that you can take. We've seen buildings in which hot water tanks have been used as the backup heating system, which is really quite neat. But the most important thing in selecting any device, any mechanical device for an R2000 house is health and safety. And we're going to be looking at a whole bunch of those things in future programs.
Well, gee, after being in the basement with hardly any light at all, this is quite nice, isn't
It's a
it?
nice sunny day.
Yeah, which brings us to the fifth key feature, and I guess it's the one I'm sort of most interested in, passive solar. And I'm interested in it because it's such a great phrase. It just feels like you ought to be saying passive solar, but what do you mean by passive solar?
It means orienting your house properly to the sun. It means taking maximum advantage of the exposure in the building that faces south by putting windows there, doing some pre-planning to make sure that you're going to be able to take full advantage. And what happens if you do that is that you can reduce the entire energy bill of an energy-conserving home by 40%.
So it doesn't, passive solar doesn't mean that you unload a truck and load something in there for passive solar, no materials, it's just thought?
There's no design, it's only a design requirement. There's no requirement for any money to be spent on it. It's just planning, that's all.
Well, that sounds great. I'm going to look forward to hearing more about passive solar. It sounds like it's free.
Well, it is.
Well, you know what? We're here.
Yeah, we're here.
We're here at the end of the program.
Oh,
end of show one.
This is it.
Yep. How'd you like it?
Well, it was kind of fun.
You looking forward to show two?
Yeah, I think we can do a good job. We'll try.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to what you have to show me, too. Right now, I have to go wrap up the show.
Okay.
Well, that's it for our first show on R2000, the Better Built House. It's an overview on energy-efficient houses that are being built under the R2000 logo. Now, from the builder's perspective, we found out that these houses may take a little bit more time, materials, and attention. But those things can add up to a house that's not only energy efficient, but also better built. And a bonus comes along with it. These houses are more comfortable and have a healthy, controlled indoor environment. On the next program, we're going to look at building design. Join us. I'm in the mechanical room of a typical R2000 house, and the equipment down here not only heats the house, but it supplies... Okay. Come on down to the mechanical room. Come on down. We got HRV. We got a furnace. It's a Lennox pulse. It's very fine. Use controlled combustion all the way through. It's 95% efficient. And you know how much that costs? You might think that costs $3,000. You might think that costs $4,000. You might think that costs $5,000, but you're wrong. Today, $29.95. How do I stay in business, you ask?
Crazy David.
I steal them.
Or anytime. It's your career.